right, you know what? I've had more than enough of that. Let's see what we can do about never dying again. And we'll do that with the help of totems. I'm in a hole. Totems are an item in Minecraft that give you the ability to recover from death. Basically, whenever you get down to 0 hearts, the totem will activate and destroy itself, but it will give you a few extra hearts as well as regeneration and a little bit of absorption. So let's go over the basics of how you can get one. First of all, the only ways to get totems are through raids. And you can trigger a raid by finding yourself an illager tower like this one and finding a guard captain. The guard captains will have little banners that they'll be holding onto, and that's how you can identify them. I don't see any right now, so let's take a minute and fly around and see if we can find one. But before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everyone in between, I am OverHugs, and I'd like to welcome you back to Building Bread. All right, and here we have a captain. So let's encourage him to come over here and give up his banner. And once we do that and we kill the captain, you will see we now have a debuff, which is called Bad Omen. And this is all we need, so let's get out of here for now. When we come on, you see that Bad Omen does last for a very long time. It's lasting so long that it doesn't even have the number here of how long it lasts. And this is the first half of how we trigger our raid. The second half is that we want to find a village. Once we enter the village, you will notice that the raid will immediately spawn, as we will get a raid bar coming up in the middle of our screen pretty much as soon as we hit the village proper itself. So now you see the raid bar is filling in the middle of the screen, and this means that the raid itself has started. Raids have a number of waves that will come in, and as they come in, you'll get different kinds of mobs. In the first wave, whenever it comes in, and you'll hear the wave starting by that horn, and you can see that they're spawning pretty far away, all the way over there, and running to the village itself. Basically, raids have 2 conditions. One, when you win, and you go through and complete all the waves, and the second condition is when you lose, and you lose when the pillagers here manage to kill all the villagers, and there's nothing left in the village itself for them to do. They will put their arms up and celebrate victory, but we're not going to see that today. And now here comes the next wave. Waves can generate from different spots, but they will always be centered around whatever your village is. Our village is these series of beds right now, because this is where we built it. So you can see that this wave is coming from over there. So let's deal with them. One thing to keep in mind is that the axe-wielding Vindicators here hit like a truck. So be especially sure that you're careful in dealing with them whenever you can be. So far they haven't dropped much, but you do see that we'll get emeralds out of this, as well as saddles and the totems that we're actually looking for. Totems will come when you get these waves. When you start seeing these Ravagers spawn, they have the ability to drop totems. Also bear in mind that they do destroy things whenever they do their general attack. So generally I try to take them out very far away from anything I care about. They do have the ability to destroy specific blocks, usually things like crops. You can do some interesting things by building a crop farm using a Ravager mechanic. And people have done interesting things as well, like using them to kill iron golems in an iron farm. Looking at you, Tango Tech. All right, so in this wave, you see that we also have witches that are added to the mix. Witches are kind of dangerous because they do throw poison potions at you, and poison can take out your health very fast. It won't ever kill you, but it is just going to cause it to tick down. So I tend to like to take them out from afar. Nope, I see you. No trying to ninja up on me. I was just like you, and then one day I took an arrow to the knee. And you can see the Vindicators are desperately trying to figure out a way to get into our villager breeder. And again, if they could, that would be our lost condition. That would be how they would be able to win the raid. But since we are 100% protected, we're fine, and we can take our time taking things out. Oh, wait a minute, there's an Evoker. Evokers are more dangerous. And Evokers do drop the thing that we care most about here, which is the totem itself. This is also a Vex, and in case you didn't notice, Vexes hit really hard. One of the ways you can deal with Vexes, if they are a problem to you, is by putting down a bunch of boats. Vexes will get trapped in boats until they naturally despawn, and yeah, again, Vexes are one of the things that are dangerous, and they do have the ability to fly through blocks. So make sure you're careful, but the nice thing is they will despawn automatically after a couple of minutes. And here we go. Here is our first totem of the raid that we got when we killed that evoker. Totems themselves can either be held in a slot or in your offhand in place of a shield. Given the fact that the biggest thing we're at risk for right now is almost certainly evokers and vexes, why don't we go ahead and we'll equip that as soon as we take out this switch. So if we take the totem and we put it in the offhand in place of our shield, you can now see that we are protected. I think we got, yep, we did. We got another totem off of that. And I tend to not like to do the next wave until the vexes are taken care of. You have a tremendous amount of time when you go through and deal with the raid itself. Oh, what did we get here? And here we got a saddle as well. So you can see we've got saddles, we have player heads, we have a variety of different objects here that we've gotten from the raid. And that's one of the strengths of the raid, is it does give you a tremendous amount of items. Yeah, see, that vex just went right underground where we can't even hit them. The raid will not end if you go beyond 128 blocks, so you don't have to worry about that. Lead the target hugs. Leading the target is important. Another thing you do have to be careful about, and we've seen this on streams before, is that if you are near a outpost, then what will happen is anything that the outpost generates will join the raid. So basically your raid can go on perpetually, which can be very difficult to say the least. We had that happen on a live stream. And here's an example sometimes of what can happen. We have one person left there in the raid that is just off and flying about and off doing his own thing and having fun. But we can't have that. I don't want an evoker sitting around, especially since they will give us wonderful items. And here we go, we've now completed the raid. This is our win condition, and you see that we've also gotten a debuff called Hero of the Village. And what Hero of the Village will do is very similar to what zombifying and curing a villager will do. It will significantly decrease the cost of your items, your trades that you do with villagers, as well as having to the point where they will give you free items. For an example of how Hero of the Village works, let's go back over to our trading hall. You can see as we're landing here and we go and we look, everything is basically down to 1, which it normally is pretty cheap, but we don't always get everything all the way down to 1 emerald like it is right now. So now, after cleaning up a little bit, you see the spoils of victory. We walked away with 5 totems, a bunch of different mob heads, some emeralds, some saddles, and a bunch of ominous banners. As well as we walk around here, you'll see that the villagers will just start throwing things to us. And some of these things are not that useful. For example, we just got a loaf of bread that was given to us by one of these farmers. But other things can be more useful, especially depending on where you are in the game itself. Librarians here will throw books at you, and that can be kind of handy, as well as if we go over to our Fletchers, they can give you all kinds of different arrows that will come with that. And here you see some redstone that the cleric has thrown to us. While it's not a tremendous amount of items that you get out of this, we've really only gotten these 3 different criteria right now. It does add up, and this is a mechanic that we can and will take advantage of a little bit further on. Now, you'll notice that that took a lot of time. It probably took me 5 minutes to go and find the captain, as well as we had to go to a village, and then going through and beating the raid itself took about another 20 minutes. That's a little too long for me. So, as with most things, we're going to go through and we're going to automate this as much as possible. And the way that we can do that is by constructing a raid farm. There's a couple of different criteria you want to do when selecting your location for a raid farm. One, you want to make sure that you're controlling the spawn locations. So you want to pick somewhere generally out in the ocean where there are no spawn blocks. Secondly, you don't want to be near any other farms because we're going to be very careful about the amount of blocks that we have and where mobs can be when it comes to the farm itself. Thirdly, you don't want to be too far away from a village because we are going to have to transport villagers here in order to make it work. And so if you go too far, it's going to be rather difficult. So we've already picked out a spot right here that we're going to use first try. And as you can see, this is pretty much far away from everything, but our base is right over there. You can see the very edge of it in the fog. So why don't we just get to work? And as always, let's take our super speed potion and get into a time lapse. And with that, we're done. You may be asking, how do we get all the villagers in here? And the answer to that is slowly and painfully. What I did was I created a track that goes all the way back to our original villager breeder that we created for the iron farm. And what we basically did was we created some villagers. We did a trade with them to get the professions that we wanted, and then we hiked them along this entirely way too long track in order to get them over to this section here. There's 3 different places where villagers are in this farm, and the 3 are not entirely needed. Basically, you only need to have 2. However, this group of villagers here that we've put in place are in order to get the items that we get when we become hero of the village. And so we wanted to do that, to be able to collect these items because some of them are very valuable and they're quite worthwhile. Realistically, the only thing we need are the villagers that are more down here, which we brought through this second track, as well as thankfully just by a boat because the other one is right in the water. So the other one is standing right there, and what happens is this system will add and remove it from being a profession. So it will put the profession block down so that it can either be or not be, depending on what we want for the center of the village at that point in time. And then finally, all the way down here is one final villager down here who's always going to have a profession. And we want this in order so that when we come all the way down that we will start. So why don't we go and let's get ourselves, once again, Bad Omen, and see how this farm works. Hey, look, you've got a banner. I'll take that. Thanks. So you want to swing right at this spot, about once per second. You don't want to do it any more often than that, because then you run the risk of only tapping something like an Evoker, which could lead them to summon Vexes, which will not give you a good time. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to sit here until this trapdoor opens up, which will drop us down below and start the raid. As we're falling, we'll go between the 2 different villagers, which will turn Bad Omen into an actual raid, because it treats that like that is the center of a village. So we'll go through and we'll do that, and then there will be a piston on the bottom that will knock us back into the bubble column and bump us over here so that we'll go back up and end up in the right spot. And you can see now the raid is starting. So if we were here with our auto clicker, we would be sitting right here going about once per second still, and this will put us in exactly the right position as we come back up through the bubble column. And as you can hear, we now have an ominous horn, which means the raid is starting. So we'll get the first wave of raiders as they come down here. And what will happen as we're doing it, and you can see we've gotten Bad Omen again because we got a guard captain in the first wave. There's always a guard captain in each wave. Normally, you wouldn't refresh the raid because there's no point in doing so. What only happens is you can't get it because the raid is already occurring. But if you look, the raid bar at the top has gone away because we've gone far enough away from the village in order to clear it. So now what will happen is we will infinitely do this first wave over and over again. And so by doing this, we'll basically get infinite raid loot. And this is completely sustainable pretty much indefinitely because you see we're refreshing the raid, and now we're coming back up to the top again in order to take on the wave again. And this will repeat pretty much indefinitely, giving us all the things that you can possibly get from a raid itself. And that's pretty awesome. And here's what it looks like from replay mod while we're going through and summoning the raid itself. You see all of the raiders pop in at about the same time, but the Ravagers get caught in lava and they burn, which is great because we don't really want their items anyway. Everything else slips on the ice and falls down to the killing chamber below. So now, after doing a couple of different waves, you can see exactly what we get from this, and it's a lot. There's quite a lot here we quite frankly don't really want. I don't really care about crossbows, nor do I care about any of these axes. But this is a challenging thing to sort, because while we do have stackable items, and we can do this through single item filters like we have with everything else, there's a number of items here that are not stackable and very difficult to sort. But quite frankly, that's another episode. And with that, I think we're going to call it an episode today. We've had a lot of fun, and it's nice to be able to defy death now that we've got more than enough totems to not have to worry about it as we plummet into the ocean, but not quite. So once again, thanks for choosing to join me on the adventure today. I have been OverHugs, and this has been Building Bread. As a reminder, I donate all of the profits that I make off of this series to local food banks, so I would really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, and tell a friend. Together, we can help people that are in need. I hope you have the most wonderful of days, and I'll see you soon.